So think about the global environmental conversation right now. I mean, you know the narrative, right? It's everywhere.
Yeah, it absolutely dominates the room.
Right. You've got these soaring global oil prices, you've got environmental crises looming, and governments all over the world are just scrambling. They're aggressively pushing these mandatory fuel efficiency standards.
They want to essentially save the world from the top down.
Exactly. But, and this is where we're starting today, because I want to give you a really jarring juxtaposition. Zoom out of those fancy global policy boardrooms and zoom into the chaotic, super bustling streets of India in the early 2000s.
Right. A completely different reality.
Totally. You have millions of low-income car buyers there, and they are making a choice that literally baffles these global policymakers. They are willingly, actively passing up the most fuel-efficient vehicles.
Which just fundamentally breaks the models those
Yeah.
policymakers use.
It does. Like, why are people in a developing nation seemingly volunteering to pay more for gas? I mean, are they just financially illiterate? Or, and this is the hook, do they know a secret that these multi-billion-dollar policy models have completely missed?
I can tell you the data points heavily to the latter.
Yeah, and that is our mission today. Welcome to the deep dive. We are jumping into a fascinating working paper from the National Bureau of Economic Research, the NBER. It's by these top economists from the University of Maryland and the World Bank.
Randy Chugh, Maureen L, and Urvashi Narain.
Right. And we are going to dismantle a foundational myth of modern environmental policy. We're using hard data from the Indian passenger vehicle market from 2002 to 2006. We want to find out if this supposedly, irrational consumer is actually an economic genius.
It is such a brilliant paper because it takes aim at the core justification for things like CAFE standards, corporate average fuel economy standards.
Right. The rules that force car makers to hit certain miles per gallon targets.
Exactly. Policymakers fundamentally believe, and they have for decades, that you and I, the consumers, are short-sighted and irrational.
It's kind of insulting when you think about it.
It is. The baseline assumption is that buyers are dumb. They think you walk onto a lot, you look at the sticker price of a car, and your brain just shuts off. You supposedly completely ignore the lifetime savings of buying a fuel-efficient vehicle.
So because we're dumb, the government has to step in as the savior.
That's the logic. They have to use heavy-handed regulations to save us from ourselves.
Yeah.
But the stakes here are incredibly high. Because if consumers are actually rational, if they correctly calculate the value of fuel economy when they buy a car, then these forced government standards are not just useless.
They're actively harmful, right?
Precisely. They're restricting your choices and causing hidden financial damage to the very people they claim to be protecting.
So, to figure out if people are actually rational, we have to talk about what absolute rationality even looks like in economics. And we're going to keep this super simple, no academic jargon.
Right. The math of perfect rationality comes down to present discounted value, or PDV.
Okay, break that down for us. What's the perfect equation?
It's simple in theory. When you buy a car, the extra premium you pay up front, the extra cash you hand over just to get better fuel technology, should precisely equal the present discounted value of the fuel you save over the entire life of the vehicle.
Which in India at this time for hatchbacks was what, like 11 years?
Yep, roughly 11 years for hatchbacks, 12 years for sedans.
Okay, so wait, let me push back on this a little because it's like buying a $30 LED light bulb instead of a $2 incandescent one, right? Are you telling me that an average car buyer in a developing country is standing in a dusty dealership, kicking the tires, and running a 12-year discounted cash flow analysis in their head?
That's the billion-dollar question.
Because honestly, that sounds impossible. I don't even do that when I buy a fridge.
And that skepticism is exactly why the policy assumption has survived for so long. It sounds impossible. And it's also incredibly hard to measure, because you can't just look at a car's sticker price to know what the fuel economy part costs.
Right. Cars aren't just engines. They're bundles of features.
Exactly. When you buy a car, you're buying steel, glass, air conditioning, safety features, brand prestige, all mashed into one price.
Okay, think of it like unbaking a cake. You have a finished cake with a single price tag, say $20, but you want to know exactly how much the sugar inside it costs. You can't just look at the cake and know.
That is a perfect analogy. You need a way to isolate the sugar, or in this case, isolate the fuel economy. And to do that, economists use a hedonic price model.
Which sounds fancy, but it's basically just a high-tech scanner, right?
That's exactly how you should picture it. It's a statistical scanner that dissects the car, and puts a specific dollar or rupee price tag on every single individual trait.
So what traits are we scanning for in this Indian car market?
The researchers threw everything into the model: kilometers per liter, curb weight, power-to-weight ratio, which is essentially your horsepower engine size, torque, luxury features, safety ratings, automatic transmissions. They mapped it all out.
And we really need to paint a picture of this market landscape. We're talking 2002 to 2006 in India. This isn't America where everyone's driving a massive SUV.
No, not at all. It's utterly dominated by small cars. 65% of the market is hatchbacks. Just tiny, highly utilitarian vehicles. Sedans make up about 17%.
Small, practical, and cheap. So the researchers scan these cars, and right away, the data throws them a huge curveball, the first big anomaly.
A massive anomaly. When they looked at the raw data comparing petrol-so gasoline hatchbacks to diesel hatchbacks, the numbers didn't make any sense at first glance.
Yeah, let's look at those numbers because they are wild. The diesel cars are heavier, right?
Significantly heavier. The average diesel hatchback weighed about 0.96 tons, while the petrol was only 0.773 tons.
So they're lugging around way more weight, and they have a weaker horsepower ratio.
Right, heavier and weaker. Yet, and here's the crazy part, they got better city mileage. 13.0 kilometers per liter compared to 12.1 for the petrol.
And they were selling for more money. So you're looking at this and thinking, wait, how is a heavier, weaker car getting better mileage and costing more? It totally scrambles the pricing model.
It does. And it exposes a massive flaw in the standard math that policymakers usually rely on. Usually they use something called OLS, ordinary least squares regression.
Which is just a standard way to find averages and trends in data.
Right. But it has a fatal weakness here. It falls victim to what we call the illusion of trade-offs, or omitted variable bias.
Okay, let's break that down without the jargon. What is the invisible trade-off?
Think about it from the perspective of a car engineer. If you want a car to get better gas mileage, but you don't want to invent a brand new, wildly expensive engine, what do?
You make the car lighter, you strip out the heavy steel, maybe make the engine a bit weaker.
Exactly. You degrade the physical performance of the car to boost the mileage. But a standard statistical model doesn't see that invisible sacrifice. It just sees a highly efficient car selling for a lower price because it's lighter and flimsier.
Oh, so the model looks at the cheap price and says, see, consumers don't care about fuel economy. They won't pay for it.
Yes, but it's completely missing the fact that the consumer is paying a lower price because the car itself was made worse to hit that mileage target. If you don't account for that invisible design trade-off, your math massively underestimates how much people actually value fuel efficiency.
That's a huge blind spot. It basically guarantees that policymakers will arrive at the wrong conclusion. They'll look at the flawed math and say, we need to force standards.
Exactly. So the researchers had to fix the math. They had to find a clever academic workaround to isolate the pure price of fuel economy. And they used something called instrumental variables.
And their solution here is so smart. It really feels like a detective trick. Tell us how they use the sedans to figure out the hatchbacks.
It's brilliant. To figure out the true price of fuel economy for, say, a brand's hatchbacks, they don't use the hatchbacks data. They look at the average fuel economy of that same brand's sedans.
Okay, wait. That sounds weird. Why would looking at a sedan tell you anything about a hatchback?
Because of shared engineering DNA. A car company like Hyundai or Maruti Suzuki develops an engine technology, and they use that core tech across their entire lineup.
Okay. I see where this is going.
By looking at the sedan's fuel economy, you get a clean measurement of the brand's pure technological capability. And because the sedan doesn't have the same messy, specific, weight-stripping trade-offs as the hatchback.
It acts like a filter.
Exactly. It filters out the noise. It strips away the unobserved design tweaks of the hatchback and reveals the pure, unadulterated price the consumer is paying just for fuel efficiency.
That is an absolute aha moment. Without this specific statistical trick, global policymakers are literally looking at a funhouse mirror.
They are. And once the researchers applied this fix, the scanner finally gave them clean numbers. And this is where we dropped the first major data bomb. Mind-blowing fact number one: the petrol buyers.
Get ready, because this completely shatters the myth of the short-sighted consumer.
It really does. For both petrol hatchbacks and petrol sedans, when they looked at the upfront premium paid for fuel economy, it perfectly overlapped with the lifetime fuel savings.
Perfectly, like down to the rupee.
Statistically, yes. Let's look at the specific detail from 2006. A petrol hatchback buyer paid a premium of 12,300 rupees strictly for fuel efficiency tech.
Okay, 12,300 paid up front at the dealership.
Right. And then, over the 11-year life of that car, based on driving habits and fuel prices, they saved an estimated 22,100 rupees in gas.
Now wait, a listener might hear 12,000 and 22,000 and say those aren't the same number.
Right, but you have to look at the 95% confidence interval. These are estimates with ranges based on market variance. When you overlap the range of what they paid with the range of what they saved, they completely swallow each other. Statistically, the difference is zero.
That is mind-blown territory for me. The narrative that poor consumers in developing nations are just grabbing the cheapest thing on the lot, entirely fictional.
Completely.
The Indian petrol car buyer is standing in the heat, negotiating a car, and they are calculating the long-term value of fuel economy with the precision of a supercomputer.
They are perfectly, absolutely rational, which is amazing on its own. But then, the researchers look at the diesel market, and this leads us to mind-blowing fact number 2.
The diesel reversal. I love this part.
It flips the script entirely. Remember, the whole CAFE standard policy assumes people undervalue fuel economy, right? They think people won't pay for it.
Right.
Look at diesel buyers in 2006. A diesel sedan buyer paid an 84,400 rupee premium for efficiency.
Wow. Massive premium.
But they only saved 27,000 rupees in fuel.
Wait, really? They paid 84,000 to save 27,000.
Yes. The original hypothesis isn't just wrong, it is completely backward. Diesel buyers aren't ignoring fuel efficiency. They have a fanatical obsession with it. They are wildly overpaying for it.
That's incredible. They're basically throwing money at the dealership to get this diesel tech. And here's the obvious question, why? I mean, if the petrol buyers are calculating everything perfectly, why do the math skills suddenly vanish when a consumer walks over to the diesel side of the lot?
To solve that, the researchers had to isolate the consumer's mindset even further. They needed a perfect comparison, so they introduced the twin test.
Yes, the twin paradox. This is where the arbitrage opportunity just gets ridiculous. What is a twin in this context?
A twin is the exact same car model offered by the same manufacturer, but you can choose either a petrol version or a diesel version. The body, the interior, the safety features, everything is identical. The only difference is the engine block and the fuel it drinks.
So it completely removes brand loyalty or style preferences from the equation.
Exactly. And by 2006, this wasn't some niche thing. 54% of all sedans sold in India had a direct twin.
Okay, so lay out the staggering math here. What is the financial reality of choosing the diesel twin?
It is a financial no-brainer. Buying the diesel twin costs about 7.7 to 9.4% more at the dealership.
So you pay a bit under 10% more up front.
Right. But for that premium, you get an engine that achieves nearly 30% better mileage. You're driving 3 extra kilometers for every single liter of fuel.
Which is huge. But there's another macroeconomic factor here that supersizes this, isn't there?
Massive factor. The Indian government heavily subsidized diesel fuel at the time. It was mostly meant for agriculture, for tractors and stuff, but everyday drivers got the benefit at the pump. So diesel fuel itself was 30% cheaper than petrol.
Let me just highlight this because it's the ultimate arbitrage. You have a car that is 30% more efficient, burning fuel that is 30% cheaper. What does that do to the running costs?
It slashes them in half. A petrol sedan cost about 5 rupees per kilometer to drive, the diesel version. 2.5 rupees.
It's a straight up 50% discount on driving. Every trip you take is half off.
Exactly. And when you calculate that wealth effect over the life of the vehicle, it's staggering. Choosing a diesel hatchback saves you 44% of the entire purchase price of the car in fuel costs.
Oh my God. Almost half the car pays for itself?
Yep. Sedans save about 23%. It's an unbelievable amount of money to get back.
So how did the market react? Because if I see a deal where I get half my car's value back, I'm taking it immediately.
And so did the Indian consumers. They aggressively chased the value. From 2002 to 2006, diesel adoption in twin hatchbacks exploded. It went from 46% to 74%.
Almost 3/4 of buyers jumped on the diesel train. The invisible hand is working perfectly. People see the free money and they take it.
They absolutely do. But...
here we go. The but.
What about the holdouts?
Right. If buying a diesel saves you almost half the price of the car, why on earth are 41% of twin sedan buyers still stubbornly buying the petrol version?
It's the big mystery. I mean, are these the irrational idiots the government is trying to save? Are they just blindly setting money on fire?
Why walk away from a 50% discount on fuel?
Well, the first thing researchers noticed is the mileage factor. The data showed that petrol owners drove significantly less. They averaged about 1,300 kilometers a month compared to almost 1,900 for diesel owners.
Okay, so if the car's just sitting in the driveway most of the time, the diesel savings won't add up as fast. That makes some sense.
It does. But even after the researchers adjusted for those lower driving miles, and even after they subtracted the upfront cost difference of buying the diesel,
Let me guess, there's still a gap.
a huge gap. Petrol sedan buyers were still leaving a net savings equal to 15% of the car's price on the table.
15%. They voluntarily walk away from 15% of the car's value. Why? It makes no financial sense. Are they really just bad at math?
No, they aren't. And to understand why, we have to look past the spreadsheet and look at the physical reality under the hood. This is the big reveal. We have to talk about the driving soul.
The driving soul, I love this. What is physically different about these engines?
Diesel engines, especially back then, were incredibly heavy. To handle the high compression of diesel fuel, the engine block has to be basically a massive chunk of cast iron.
Just a giant anvil sitting over the front wheels?
Exactly. So when you buy the diesel twin, your car suddenly gains a ton of weight. And worse, those diesel engines didn't produce great horsepower. The result, your horsepower to weight ratio plummets to just 70% of the petrol version.
Only 70%. That's brutal. So it's like you're trading the heart of a racehorse for the legs of an ox. Sure, the ox can walk forever on incredibly cheap food, but it has completely lost its sprint.
That's it, exactly. It becomes sluggish, it's heavy in the corners, it's frustrating to pass people on the highway.
So how do economists explain a consumer choosing the racehorse over the cheap ox?
They use a microeconomic utility formula. Basically, utility of X ZPK is greater than utility of X ZDK.
Okay, you promised no jargon. What does that actually mean for the guy at the dealership?
It means the petrol buyers aren't stupid. They see the 150,000 rupee fuel savings of the diesel. They see the spreadsheet perfectly. And they look at the dealer and consciously say, the thrill, the responsiveness, and the pure joy of driving this lighter, faster petrol car is worth more to me than 150,000 rupees.
Wow. So it's not a mistake. It's a calculated purchase of happiness.
Yes. The mind shift here is crucial. The extra money they spend on gas isn't wasted. It is the exact rational price they're willingly paying for driving joy. Every individual is maximizing their own utility based on their own personal values. If you want savings, you buy diesel. If you want horsepower, you buy petrol.
That completely flips the entire premise of consumer myopia. They aren't short-sighted, they just have different priorities. But, and this is where things get really dark, what happens when we connect these brilliant micro-decisions back to the massive global policy?
This is what we call the global welfare backfire. It's a direct collision.
Right, because if a government forces extreme CAFE standards on the market, if they say every car must get 30% better mileage by law, what will the automakers do?
They can't just invent magic engines overnight. They will do the easiest, cheapest thing available. They will strip weight and severely restrict the horsepower to meet the legal limits.
And will legally mandate the ox.
Exactly. They will kill the racehorse. And by doing that, the government strips away the exact performance characteristics, the driving soul, that 41% of the market willingly values more than the gas money.
That is a tragic irony. The policy literally actively destroys societal welfare while claiming to protect the consumer. They're telling people, congratulations, we saved you money. And the driver is sitting in a totally gutless, miserable car thinking, I would have paid the money to have my engine back.
The government forced them to a worse lifestyle under the banner of environmental salvation. And this becomes even more brutal when you look at the Western comparison data.
Yeah, let's talk about the hypocrisy here.
Look at the U.S. market around the same time. The average U.S. car weighed 3,500 pounds and got a dismal 19.4 miles per gallon.
Just massive gas-guzzling tanks.
Right. Meanwhile, Indian cars were incredibly light, like 1,700 to 2,300 pounds, and highly efficient, getting 22.3 to 28.3 miles per gallon.
India is already operating at the absolute frontier of lightweight efficiency. They are already driving the smallest, most sensible cars physics will allow.
Exactly. Imposing Western-style mandatory standards on India to fix a non-existent consumer irrationality would be catastrophic. You'd just be forcing them to make cars so light and weak they'd barely be drivable, crushing their market for absolutely no reason.
It's just a stunning example of policy arrogance. So let's wrap this up. We started with this grand top-down view of the world, these macro models drawn up in government offices that assume consumers are just dumb, myopic creatures who need to be saved from the sticker price.
And the data, the pure, unadulterated hedonic data, completely dismantled that.
Completely. We found out that the world is actually shaped by millions of individuals making brilliant, hyper-rational trade-offs. They're balancing their wallets, their daily commutes, the fluctuating price of diesel, and the simple human joy of horsepower.
The invisible hand is alive and well, operating with supercomputer precision in the chaotic traffic of India.
It really is. So we're going to leave you with a final provocative thought. Think about today. We are currently living through a massive global push toward electric vehicles, carbon neutrality mandates, and top-down environmental restructuring. It's happening everywhere.
History repeating itself.
Right. As policymakers once again force these strict standards onto the market, claiming that you, the consumer, just don't know what's good for you. We have to ask, are we making the exact same arrogant mistake when the grand narrative of saving the planet clashes with the daily rational happiness of the individual? Whose math should we really trust?
Something to think about next time you're at the dealership.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time.